30 seconds and counting. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to Stennis Space Center. I'm Bettina Inclán with NASA's Office of Communications. Welcome to this post-test briefing for the hot fire test for the core stage of NASA's Space Launch System rocket of the Artemis program. We're standing right in front of the rocket and the test stand that happened a few hours ago. And the hot fire test is, as a reminder, the 8th test in the Green Run test series, a comprehensive assessment of the rocket's core stage prior to launching the Artemis mission. We have some wonderful people here to tell us more about what happened today and the future of this program. So with us is, of course, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, Stennis Center Director Rick Gilbrick, and John Honeycutt, SLS Program Manager of the NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. Our speakers will be given a few opening remarks, and then we'll take questions from the reporters who are here with us today. We'll also be taking questions from reporters who submitted them through email at hq-heo-pao@mail.nasa.gov. For the reporters joining us today, remember to ask one question, and then we'll try to and make sure to identify yourself, and then we'll try to get as many questions as possible. But before that, let's first hear from our NASA Administrator, Jim Bridenstine.
Well, thank you so much, Bettina. And I think today was an important day. I know not everybody is feeling as happy as we otherwise could because we wanted to get 8 minutes of a hot fire, and we got over a minute. But I just want to remind people where we've been and where we're going and what an important milestone this is. We think about the SLS rocket, the most powerful rocket ever built. It's going to take our astronauts to the moon. And of course, you know, it has in the past had delays and cost overruns. But the team here at Stennis, the team at the Marshall Space Flight Center, the team at Michoud, they have really come through an amazing way to get us to a position where today we had the opportunity to fire all 4 RS-25 engines for over a minute. And we're in a position now to say, look, we don't know what we don't know at this point. I'm going to let John Honeycutt talk about what we do know and what we don't know. But today we got lots of data. We got lots of data that we're going to go through and be able to sort through and get to a point where we can make determinations as to whether or not, you know, launching in 2021 is a possibility or not. But I just want to say, to the entire NASA workforce, and that includes the people here at Stennis, the people at Michoud, the people at Marshall. We're grateful for you. And today, while it's not everything we hoped that it would be, this is an important day, and you have done really good work to get us to where we are. So I want people to be encouraged because the future is very bright. And certainly we're going to learn a lot from this test. We're going to learn a lot. In fact, we already know we have learned a lot. Getting up to the point where we actually ignited the rockets, we learned a lot. And so this is a good day. I really think that this is a good day, and we test for a reason because we want to learn, and we're going to continue to learn. So with that, Bettina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. Next, Rick.
Yeah, I would go further than Jim and say out of my 29 years, this is the best day yet. And there's better days to come. I'm looking forward to that. But I did want to say how proud I am of the Stennis team, the test team, and everyone who's worked to get this stand ready. It took 6 years of construction work, and we've been stepwise going through a test program over the last year to get us to this day for the Green Run. Am I disappointed we didn't make it for full duration? Yeah, I'm a test guy. You like to see these go all the way to the end, but I'm not discouraged. This is exactly why we test. We've got over 500 what we call ground test instruments on the vehicle itself. There's, I think, 600 of what we call developmental flight instrumentation that will stay on that experimental flight when we fly the Artemis 1 flight. So, and we also have 450 channels on the facility that help us get a full picture of what happens anytime we have an issue on the vehicle or the facility. Right now, the facility looks to have performed as we expected, which is always, good. I want to deliver our part, and the team will be looking at the data. I'm also extremely impressed with the integrated test team. This has been just a great effort by the Marshall Space Flight Center SLS program, Boeing, who builds the core stage, Aerojet Rocketdyne, who provides those RS-25 engines, and our own S3 test operations contractor. They're going to go in there and look at this data, and we're ready to support. But it's a proud day for me, and I'm looking forward to what lies ahead. Thank you, Bettina.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. Hey, when we all assembled early this morning, just a little bit after the weather briefing, I overheard somebody talking on the phone to one of their, probably a friend or something like that, was surprised to find out that they were at work today. And he proceeded to remind them that this was the biggest test that they've done here in 50 years. This is why we test, and it's important. I want to just say how much appreciation I have for the Stennis team, for the Marshall Space Flight Center team, and for everybody across the agency. That includes our prime contractors that have helped get us this far in the SLS program and primarily the green run today. I think you guys know that we had a couple of wet dress rehearsals leading up to today. We learned some things in those wet dress rehearsals that we were able to address today. Specifically, we had an engine bleed, engine conditioning challenge that we worked on engine 4 today. The team worked through a process to change the way that we conditioned the engines and allowed us to overcome the challenge that we saw in wet dress rehearsal number 2. Interestingly, we hadn't pressurized these tanks on the core stage in the previous wet dress rehearsals because we didn't get that far along in the count. The plan was to do a pressurization test in parallel with the change we made for the engine conditioning. And so that let us do 2 things: make sure that we could condition the engine appropriately, and then also learn what we could learn about the pressurization system. What we learned is that we didn't have the pressurization valves modeled appropriately. The team worked really hard during the last part of the countdown today, and we were able to adjust those parameters, and it manifested itself when we pre-pressed the LOX tank and the hydrogen tank, and then subsequently started the RS-25 engines. Now, I know most of you are curious to know why we terminated at 60 seconds. The team, when I left the team a little while ago, they were still beginning to pour through the data, and that we will continue to do that over the next several days, and we'll keep you guys up to speed on what we learned. I can tell you what, I know some of you were listening to the Test Control Center during the test. You could hear the comm where we talked. There was some conversation around a FID on engine 4, which is our terminology for a failure identification, shortly followed by MCF, which is a major component failure. I don't know much more about that than you do at this point in time. Any parameter that went awry on the engine could send that failure ID. But at the time that they made the call, we did still have 4 good engines up and running at 109%. When we got to main stage after we started the engines, part of the plan was to throttle back to 95%. and then throttle back up to 109. And at the same time, we're running a gimbal profile for all 4 engines. And so there's a lot of dynamics going on at the point in time. We did see a little bit of a flash come from around the interface between the thermal protection blanket on engine 4 at the time where we had initiated the gimbal thereabouts. At that point in time, to the best of my knowledge now, the engine controller sent a command, sent the data to the core stage controller to shut the vehicle down. So in my opinion, you know, the team accomplished a lot today. We learned a lot about the vehicle. We got the vehicle loaded. We got our pressurization system wrung out. We got the engines conditioned and got roughly 60 minutes of time on the RS-25s.
Can I just, I want to make sure, because reporters are out here reporting the thermal conditioning from the hydrogen bleed, the challenge that we had there before the fire began, before the engines fired. I don't want to say, but before the engines fired, that thermal conditioning challenge was on engine 3. I just want to be clear on that.
Right.
It was not engine 4.
Right. I said 4, and I misspoke. It was 3. You're right.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Thank you both. So with that, when you go to questions from reporters, I just want to remind you, we'll be taking 1 question for a reporter. If we have time, we'll go back around and try to get more. But with that, we'll start with our reporters that are here, and Jeff Faust.
Hi, Jeff Faust of Space News. Since the test didn't go the full 485 seconds or even the 250 seconds previously stated was the minimum, is the assumption here that you're going to have to go back and do another hot fire test? And if so, what sort of time frame, how long is that going to take before you have to recycle, you're able to recycle and do another hot fire test?
So I'll start and then I'll let you. I'll let John give his opinion on this, but I don't think at this point that we have enough information to know. And in fact, I know that that's what we discussed earlier. It depends what the anomaly was and how challenging it's going to be to fix it. And we've got a lot to learn to figure that out. I think it very well could be that it's something that's easily fixable, and we could feel confident going down to the Cape and staying on schedule. It's also true that we could find a challenge that's going to take more time. I wish I could tell you more, Jeff, but I think at this point it's just too early. Do you have anything to add, John?
I think you said it right, Jim. It's one of these things where the team's going to pour through the data. We have said all along that we would like to get at least to 250 seconds, but I think we need to do our due diligence and go look at the data that we've collected to ensure that we got a good plan moving forward.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Eric Berger.
Hi, Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Thanks for the show this afternoon. I'd like to ask about potentially of swapping out engines. I think you can do that at Stennis, but could you clarify that if you need to swap out an RS-25, you could do it here? Approximately how long would that take? And are there RS-25s in storage that have been tested and could be swapped on with high confidence that they'd be perform as you'd wanted? Thank you.
Yeah, Eric, it's as a matter of fact, we've got the spare engines for Artemis 1 here at the Stennis Space Center now, and they're ready to go. So in the event we did have to swap out an engine, we would pull from that complement of engines to go do that work. We have the capability to do an engine swap out here, as well as doing one at KSC. Obviously, if we ran into a problem, I think we would end up doing it here.
Thank you.
Oh, let me take action to get back with you on it. I think it may be a week, 10 days, something like that. But can we take action? Follow up with you?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
We'll follow up with you, Eric. With that, we had some questions that were submitted online via via email. We're going to go to Catherine Hamilton with our Office of Communications.
Thank you. This question is from Chris Davenport of the Washington Post. Exactly how long did the engines fire before they were shut down? And does that give you enough data to ship the core stage to KSC, or will you have to redo the test?
Yeah, same. I think the amount of seconds, it was over 60. Do you know what the specific number was, John?
I don't have the exact. It's right around 60, give or take a little more.
Okay. So around, it was over 60 seconds, and at this point, we just simply don't have enough data to know. Look, the engineers are going to go over all the data. They're going to make assessments, determine what needs to be fixed, and then based on that, we can make a determination whether or not we're going to be able to ship down to KSC.
Thank you. Next.
Next question is from Joey Roulette of Reuters. Following up to Bridenstine and Honeycutt's response to Jeff, how much time would be needed to ready for another hot fire test if that's the path the teams decide to take?
I'll let you go, John.
All right. Yeah, so obviously, like we talked earlier, we got to fully understand the problem and do an assessment of the core stage as well as the engines to make sure we understand the problem and what needs to be fixed or repaired if we need to. So from a Stennis standpoint, Rick can weigh in on how long it takes him to turn his crew around.
Yeah, we are using unprecedented amounts of gases and propellants here to support this test. So once we get into the hot fire, we have to replenish all those commodities. So that probably would be at least a 4 to 5 day proposition if we were trying to get to that test as early as we possibly could.
Thank you. Catherine, you have the next question?
Is there any, the next question is from Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now. Is there any indication whether the issue with engine number 4 was a hardware problem, a software problem, or a sensor issue?
Don't have enough, I hadn't looked at the data close enough to know that yet.
Okay.
The next question is from Amy Thompson with Space.com. How does the team feel to finally have this test happen despite the challenges and the pandemic?
I told you I'm so proud and excited. They worked so many problems, and you got to remember, we've been doing this through COVID, the busiest hurricane season we've seen, and the team has just shined. So I'm extremely proud and excited, and like I said, this is a dream come true for a dedicated test like this. And we are dedicated to this. We have this buffer zone that allows us to test these massive rockets unfettered and 24/7. It's a real asset to the nation, and it's our prime business. So, today was a dream day for me.
And I would add to that, going back to when I first showed up at NASA, and SLS was being delayed and cost overruns. Talked to John, talked to Jody Singer and so many others and said, what do we need to do to get this program on track? Well, we need to start with the engine section was a challenge. The engine section was taking a lot more time than anybody anticipated. So that they suggested we buy hardware so that we can actually integrate the rocket horizontally rather than vertically, and then we can work issues in parallel. So while the engine section is continuing to be developed and built, we could actually start working on other parts of the rocket. And that accelerated the schedule in a meaningful way. We also took a lot of the NASA folks at Marshall and other places around the country, and we embedded them with the Boeing team down at Michoud in a way that we integrated teams that we hadn't done that before. And these were some of the steps that cost money, but in the long run save money on a program like this. And because of that, we're here today. Because of the hard work that was done by the teams, both Boeing and NASA, to actually move this program forward in a significant way. Here I am just a few short days away from the end of my tenure as the NASA administrator. And if you would have told me 2 years ago that we would be doing the green run, I would have questioned it. So I just want to compliment everybody. This is a really good day for us to be able to get to this point. And this is a big point, again, depending on what we learn, but this is a big milestone in an eventual shipment of this rocket to Kennedy for a launch to the moon. We have to remember, the rocket that we just tested is the rocket that is going to launch Orion around the moon. This is test hardware. It is also flight hardware at the same time. And that's a very unique kind of capability. In other words, when we do this test, there is risk that we cannot take, because this is the same vehicle that will fly Orion. It'll have enough delta V to make sure that Orion has the energy to go around the moon. So this is a unique program. It's special, and I think we got to a point where we can all be very proud. And I say that for the NASA team. Everybody who's been so involved in this program can be proud of what they've achieved today.
I think, no, I don't think I know, the team that I interacted with today, as well as the team back at the Marshall Space Flight Center and across the country, was extremely excited about the accomplishments that we made so far and today. Sure, they wanted to see the test duration go further, but they see this as a big milestone, and they're an extremely dedicated team.
Thank you so much. We have one more question submitted on email.
The next question is from Ken Kramer of Space Up Close. Will you proceed with booster stacking and Orion fueling?
I can answer the booster stacking piece. We can follow up on the Orion fueling part of it. On the booster stacking, I've shared with some of the folks in the media over the last month that we have started stacking the boosters at KSC, and we've been monitoring that activity in parallel with the progress that we're making here at Stennis on the green run. So we will continue to monitor that as we move forward. Obviously, what we learn relative to the things that occurred during the test today will play into that, and we'll work closely with the folks at Kennedy that are doing those operations.
Okay. Is there anything? We'll take one more, and then I think we're going to wrap up. It's really cold up here, guys.
This is a question from the Nashville News Go for Launch section from aerospace reporter Camden Hall. Do you believe that there will be any minor or major changes to the core stage based on the test?
No. No, that's speculation on my part. But what I've seen so far about the performance of the hardware during the wet dress rehearsals that we've had and during the hot fire today, and the limited amount of imagery I've been able to see so far, I don't think we're looking at a significant design change.
Okay, I think we have another question from here. Go, Eric.
Hi, Eric Berger again. Just following up on something you said, John Honeycutt, in your opening remarks about the thermal protection system. You saw a flash. Was that around 60 seconds? And it was in a blanket that's sort of around the engine to protect it from the other three engines? Or can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was kind of new information to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so each one of the four engines has a thermal blanket that's pretty robust, but it is flexible enough to allow the engines to gimbal. What the flash that we saw was in the area of that thermal protection blanket that was around engine 4. As far as the timing goes, yes, it was right around 60 seconds, but I don't have any more detail other than that at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
It's all right.
No, go ahead.
We're here for them. If there are more questions.
No, I know.
Okay.
Catherine and I are going through all the
Okay.
emails, making sure we get all the questions. I think we actually do have another question from Chris Davenport.
From Chris Davenport of the Washington Post, is a launch this year feasible?
Yeah, I think it's still too early to tell. I think as we figure out what went wrong, we're gonna know kind of what the future holds, and right now we just don't know that. So I guess the answer is yes, it still is feasible. We just don't know yet. You want to say something more, John?
No, you got it.
Okay.
I think Eric Berger has another question.
Can you just kind of run me through again the engine shutdown? It was an automatic trigger by the onboard flight software, flight computer, and was it one engine first, or did they all shut down at the same time, or what? Can you just kind of do a little tick-tock of exactly what might have happened at that moment in terms of this shut down, and it was over?
Yeah, it's so the sequence of things relative to how the engines start up and shut down goes pretty quick, and it's hard to detect that with the naked eye. What I saw in the control room that I was in is pretty much the same thing you guys saw. So it's kind of hard to detect what shut down. However, we could see that flash occur around engine 4 at that point in time. Like I told you earlier, it was around the 60-second time frame, and so there's a lot of dynamic events that occur. To just highlight some of those, right? You got engine startup, which was successful, power up to 109%, throttle back to 95%, then throttle back up to 109, and all that occurred about the same time that we're doing the engine gimbal profile, obviously with the engine up and running. And so that's pretty much what I know today.
Thank you. We have a question from Irene Klotz.
The next question is from Irene Klotz of Aviation Week. Any sign of engine damage from the shutdown?
The only thing that I've seen so far is that thermal curtain or thermal protection.
Another question from Eric Berger.
Sorry, last question. I know it's cold out here. Which of the engine 4 was which engine? Can you give me the number on that, just so that we know which one was?
Eric, I have to get it for you. We'll follow up.
Okay.
I don't have it on top of my head.
Sure. Go ahead.
Tyler Finger with WALA TV. You guys were obviously looking to go further. Would you call this a failure?
I don't think so. It was a test. We got to remember what we're doing here. We are, in fact, testing hardware. And when you test, you learn things. Look, I want to go back to what John talked about a little bit earlier. When you talk about the thermal conditioning of the engines from a bleed from the liquid hydrogen and the challenge that we had on engine 3, even before we did the hot fire, there were some things that the team had to work through. And we today, in fact, exercised the team. This is the team that's going to launch this rocket that's going to take Orion to the moon. So we exercised the team. We figured out we had a challenge. Something wasn't just right. The team worked it out. And next thing you know, we're back on track. Then we had the pressurant system for the liquid hydrogen tank. It seemed like the liquid hydrogen tank was losing pressure too rapidly. So again, the team had to figure out what's going on here. How do we fix this? And they started getting after it, doing what they do so well, which is really a wonder to see. And they came up with a solution. Look, we need to take the helium valve and make sure that it stays open a little bit longer every time we're adding pressure for an impulse for the liquid hydrogen tank. So they kept that valve open a little bit longer. They're making decisions to make sure that this rocket is working in the way that it is designed to work, and they're making it happen. Then we got to that moment where we got to fire all 4 RS-25 engines at the same time. That in itself is a win. I was standing right next to Senator Moran from Kansas, who's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee that funds NASA. I was standing right next to Senator Wicker, of course, who's the Commerce Committee chairman, of course now ranking members, but Commerce Committee, who of course is responsible for this facility here in Mississippi. And it was like an earthquake. I mean, those of you who were here felt it. The ground shook. It shook all the way to your soul. It was in a magnificent moment, and it just brought joy that after all this time, now we've got a rocket. The only rocket on the face of the planet capable of taking humans to the moon was firing all 4 RS-25 engines at the same time. Going back to the RS-25, it was the engine controller that shut down engine 4 and made the decision so that a higher order computer could then make the decision to shut down all 4. that engine controller is what's unique about the RS-25 engine compared to the Space Shuttle main engines. I was here at Stennis when we tested the RS-25 engine for, I don't remember what the duration was, but it was a long time, with that engine controller. Think about digital electronic control. Think about a smart engine. That's what we did here, and now we did it with 4, all at the same time. I just want to say, it is without question the amount of progress that we've made here today is remarkable. And no, this is not a failure. This is a test. And we tested today in a way that is meaningful, where we're going to learn, we're going to make adjustments, and we're going to fly to the moon. That's what the Artemis program is all about. That's what NASA is all about, and that's what the United States of America is all about. This was a successful day. We didn't get everything we wanted, and yes, we're going to learn, and we're going to have to make adjustments. But again, this is a test, and this is why we test.
Thank you. We have a few more questions submitted via email. Catherine?
Okay, this is another question from Joy Roulette of Reuters. For Jim Bridenstine, should a multi-billion-dollar program like SLS be expected to nail its first hot fire test successfully? Are there broader systemic changes that should be made to the program?
So if you're expecting perfection on a first test, then you've never tested before. And I would also say that this is why we do testing. I can't emphasize that enough. I will say also, when you think about, again, going back to the fact that the test article that is behind us is also the flight hardware that will launch Orion to the moon. This is unique. That means the amount of risk that we can take is very, very low. We can't afford to have this vehicle fail. And guess what? Because we have done all of the work that we have done, this article made the right decision to shut itself down. Now we've got to go figure out what made it make that decision, make some adjustments, and fix it. But before we put American astronauts on American rockets, that's when we need it to be perfect. For this, we're willing and able to take some risk, but it's very small compared to what we could do if this was not the rocket taking our astronauts or eventually our uncrewed Orion to the moon.
Thank you. With that, we'll take one last question, and then we'll give it to Administrator Bridenstine for closing remarks.
Okay.
All right, this question is from Philip Sloss of NASASpaceflight.com. What is the minimum turnaround time for the engines to fire them again at Stennis if you weren't going to replace any of them?
Yeah, we're going to have to look at the data to see what happened during the test and make that assessment before we can determine how long it would take.
So let's pretend, John, that there was nothing wrong with the engines. Obviously, RS-25s are designed to fire over and over again. What's the duty cycle after you've fired it? How long do you have to wait before you fire it up again? Is there a duty cycle?
Yeah, so there's some post-test operations that have to occur, specifically engine drying.
Okay.
And you know, if anything else we may find could potentially be umbrellaed by that. I think that time's roughly on the order of 21 to 30 days or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So
maybe it's just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's about 5 days for us to have the facility ready to go if the rocket's ready.
Yeah.
Do you want to close some remarks, Jim?
Sure. Again, I just want to thank everybody here at Stennis. I want to thank the folks at Marshall. I want to thank the folks at Michoud that built America's rocket here. I really want to thank the entire NASA family. And I certainly want to thank our prime contractor on this, Boeing, for getting us to this test today. I'll tell you, this is a program that is important for the United States of America. It's important for our leadership in the world. It's important for us to go to the moon and to go quickly. And it's important for us to maintain a leadership position where all the nations of the world come together and say, we want to be part of the Artemis program. This program is not just about science, although there is tons of science that's going to come from the Artemis program. This program goes beyond that. This is about a tool of diplomacy. It's about American leadership. It's about exploration. And so I'm very excited about what is in front of us. I want to be clear, not everything went according to script today, but we got a lot of great data, a lot of great information. I have absolutely total confidence in the team to figure out what the anomaly was, figure out how to fix it, and then get after it again. Because we don't fail. We might have a setback, and then we come back and we do it again. And that's what's going to happen here. And depending on what we learn, we might not have to do it again. We're going to find out. But I just want everybody at NASA to be encouraged because all of your work is coming to fruition, and be encouraged. 8 minutes is a long time. And this rocket will eventually fire for 8 minutes. One other thing that I want to just mention. Imagine that engine 4 had this anomaly on a flight, and it shut down. It's important to remember that unlike the space shuttle, with the SLS rocket, there's a launch abort system. And of course, we saw Nick Hague utilize the launch abort system on the Soyuz just during my time at NASA. It was effective, it worked, he was safe, and guess what? Within a matter of months, he was flying into space again. Because that's what we do at NASA. We figure out what went wrong, we fix it, and we move forward. So we have a very safe vehicle here with the launch abort capability. I would also say that depending on when the failure occurred during the launch, 3 out of 4 engines can continue burning, and maybe you'd have enough delta V to actually get into a position to go to the moon. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. We have seen rockets, in fact, recent rockets that were launching objects into various orbits, and multiple engines fail, and yet that just means the engines that are still working, they'll have to work for a few more seconds, maybe a few more minutes, burn the fuel that way, and create enough delta V to get to the right orbit. So look, there are, I think, a lot of good takeaways that we can get from this. We've learned a lot. We're going to learn a lot. And I want the entire NASA workforce to know how proud all of us are of you. And when I say all of us, I'm talking about the United States of America, because this is America's rocket, and this is going to be the rocket that leads the world back to the moon. So again, congratulations. We've got a lot to learn, but we're going to do it, and we're going to get there. So appreciate everybody for being interested in this great program. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick, Jim, and John, for your wonderful words, and also for staying up here in this very cold night. Thank you to all for joining us, and I just want to make sure that you know that there's more information on the Artemis program online on nasa.gov/Artemis program. We will be following this up with a telecon as soon as the team assesses more data, so stay tuned for more information on that. And with that, thank you so much, and have a great day.